Friends from around the world. Thanks for joining me here at JP Path Awareness. Just gonna do some reading here with Joel S. Goldsmith's book, God, the Substance of All Form. And I'm gonna continue here with chapter 11. This is States and Stages of Consciousness. So beautiful to be with you as we listen for that still small voice that will and is speaking all the time. Just need to learn to answer that door when it's knocking, to listen to our soul identity. Joel starts here. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. Words from Jeremiah 1:19-10. That was not said to a man. That was said to a state of consciousness, a state of spiritual consciousness. That state of consciousness not only roots out, but it also plants. It destroys, but it builds. The only the only thing that it tears down and destroys is a false sense of God, a false sense of the universe, a false sense of your individual being and body. What it builds up is the realization of true identity, a knowledge of the world as it really is and of all that is in the world. There are states and stages of consciousness. However, and when we are working in the human world, with our human resources, with our human wisdom and physical strength, we are living in and through a material state of consciousness. The world as a whole was for the most part in a state of material consciousness until the middle of the 19th century, when it advanced into a more mental state of consciousness. Always, there have been a few people who have to some extent known the mental realm. The artists, writers, visionaries of all time. When the power of the mind was first brought to the attention of the world at large during the middle of the last century, the world seemed ready to advance into a mental state of consciousness, and it began to do mentally what had formerly been performed physically. In other words, healings of the body which had formerly been accomplished by means of medicines, herbs, or plasters now were being brought about by thinking thoughts, by mental suggestion, at times even auto-suggestion. All types of healing by mental means came into being, from the out and out hypnotic to that which was just a mild form of suggestion or auto-suggestion. The mystical state of consciousness. Throughout all ages, however, it has always been known that, in addition to the material and the mental, there is a third and higher consciousness, spiritual consciousness, the consciousness attained by the mystics of the world, by those who have achieved conscious oneness with God. Mysticism is any teaching or religion which acknowledges the possibility of conscious union with God, conscious oneness with God. In its correct sense, mysticism recognizes the ability to receive, without benefit of outside aid, a communication from God, to receive direct guidance, to commune with God. There is nothing of the occult, nothing of the mysterious in mysticism. Correctly understood, mysticism is the language of all metaphysical teachings, because it is the teaching of conscious oneness with God. The mystical state of consciousness, conscious oneness with God, is the highest state there is. In that state, the conscious thinking mind is merely the vehicle for the mind of God, the one universal wisdom, which individualizes itself as your mind and my mind. It is much the same as what may happen to an artist if, in his higher moments of illumination, he should conceive a painting of rare beauty. He would go to the canvas to crystallize his vision, and this would be done with the aid not only of his hands, but of his human mind as well. Through his knowledge of color, perspective, and his knowledge of the technique of painting. Through those skills, he would execute the idea that came to him from his perception of the infinite spiritual sense of being. In the same way, the tone, melody, or harmony a composer embodies in his work really comes out of the infinite, out of the universal consciousness, and it individualizes itself as the work of some composer. But that composer would have to sit down and, with the technique, skill, and knowledge of harmony and musical theory that he had developed individually through what we call the human mind, he would translate his idea into a piece of music that could be played by anyone skilled in the art of the particular musical instrument for which it was intended. The greatest mystic of all time was John, the beloved disciple. It was he who wrote, "And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us." The true mystic is not a visionary in the sense of being impractical, and this teaching is not that of a visionary who sits with his head in the clouds, although that too is permissible and important if his feet are firmly planted on the ground, while his head is in the clouds, so that that which seems intangible or visionary to sense really becomes tangible as form and demonstration. In this spiritual state of consciousness, you do not idly dream, but you do have visions. You do receive ideas. These you do not tell to the ordinary man on the street, because the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. Rather do you hold them in your own consciousness, always working toward their fulfillment, until ultimately you receive proof that the Word does become flesh. It becomes tangible. It becomes visible. It dwells among us as demonstration. In the infinite way of life, We are always striving for a higher realization of true being, for the highest sense of spiritual understanding that can be attained. And it is that toward which we are all walking, and then watching as it becomes tangible and visible in our experience. Seeing spiritually is very different from seeing physically. When we are aware of psychic experiences, such as seeing colors or seeing visions, even though they may have some application to our human experience, that is, they may aid in prophecy or may serve as warnings or may even be guides. Remember that they are still entirely on the psychic or mental level of consciousness. These psychic experiences have nothing to do with the world of spirit. In spiritual literature, you never find references to those as being spiritual experiences. Such references are found only in psychic or occult literature or in literature in the mental plane. The real and the unreal universe. When we first come into metaphysics, we learn about the real world and the unreal world, about the real man and the unreal man. For always it is probably necessary that we make this distinction between what appears to us as a mortal or human being and the ideal type of man, that which we call the Christ man, the highest ideal of individual being conceivable. When we are on this path as neophytes, or even as initiates, we may take that distinction and speak of, in reality, the real man, or the real universe. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," which might set up in our thought the sense that there are two worlds. This, however, is only a temporary means in order to separate our thought from the belief that what appears to us as a sick or sinning mortal human being is God's creation, so that in the beginning of our study and practice, we may be able to look out upon this human world and say, "Thank you, Father. I know you never made this." As a matter of fact, God did not make what we are. God did not make what we see, because what we see is not what is really there. We see only our concept of what is there, and God did not make that. That is formed by our environment, with a little heredity mixed in, plus our education or lack of it, and then by our human experiences in life. For example, the person who has been robbed a few times does not trust anybody in the world, just as the person who has been deceived over and over again no longer believes in anyone. Or it may operate as the other extreme. The person who has never had anything but the most harmonious experiences, the most beautiful home life, and has known only people of integrity, never believes that there could be dishonesty or that there could be people who would intentionally harm others. In every case, the concepts entertained by these people have been colored by their environment and experience. The same applies to each one of us. The concepts we entertain of the world and all there is in it are molded by our environment, heredity, influences, and the education we have or do not have. All of these factors contribute to molding the concepts we hold of our universe. The picture before us of human good and of human evil is the unreal. Unreal world that we hear about in metaphysics, which most metaphysicians interpret as a world out here which is unreal, or a man out here who is not real, who is not the Christ man. This is not true. The only unreality about this universe and about man is that we are seeing only our concept and not what is actually there. In this period of our advance from the human to the divine, some of the schooling that we must have to further our spiritual unfoldment is the realization that what the five physical senses testify to is not reality. It is because of this that metaphysical literature refers to a real world and an unreal world, a real man and an unreal man, a material man and a spiritual man. Spiritual man and the spiritual universe are here and now. As you rise higher in this spiritual approach, you come upon a great discovery. You are that spiritual man. And right here and now is the spiritual universe. You not only do not have to die to reach this spiritual universe, but you do not have to become any other person than you are now. The only thing that is necessary is the dropping of the false traits of humanhood, which have been picked up, the unfounded fears and the ignorance of a governing principle. We do not have to become anything other than we are in order to receive divine guidance, divine help, divine wisdom, divine protection, divine supply. Why not? Because as we relax our human thinking, that is, our fearful thinking and our doubtful thinking, as we learn to relax from any belief in a power apart from God, as we learn to relax and lean back into the natural and normal state of being, we recognize, yes, God is. God is I. Then the whole world of human fears, of human doubts, and of human anxiety disappears, and with it, the need of human scheming and human planning. There is no need to take thought for tomorrow, since each minute of every day I am receiving an impulse to do that which should be done at the moment. There is no obstruction because there is nothing in my thought to bar the flow of this divine impulse. There is no hesitancy or indecision because there is no feeling that through my human ingenuity I have to do something. Therefore, in this state of realization, I become a transparency for the divine impulse, and it keeps unfolding throughout all time. With this realization, we come into a greater awareness of a divine plan in the world, and we relax and rely on it. This same thing is true of you in the home and in the business world. In that stage where, in metaphysical language, you are termed the human man, the thinking man, you spend much time planning each day, much time worrying about what you're going to do next season or next year, or what should be done for this or that in your personal world. You are living in the state of consciousness when you are a mortal human being. But you learn through metaphysics that there is a real man, and you immediately set up an ideal. You either visualize Jesus Christ or someone else, or you visualize yourself approaching that state of spirituality and divinity referred to as the real man. For a while, that will serve your purpose because it gives you an ideal towards which to work. But let us remember that you are that ideal man at all the time. You are that ideal man all the time. And all that is necessary to bring that man forth into manifestation is your realization that there is a divine principle operating in the universe. The moment you realize that, you relax. You let go of all that constituted your humanhood, your worry, your fear, your doubt, your anxiety, your planning, your scheming. And in that moment that you let go of the false sense of humanhood, and you find yourself to be that spiritual man, the real man, that man toward which you have been working, you will never come into the kingdom of heaven until you begin to realize that the man you are now is that spiritual man. And that man is in heaven now, under divine rule, under divine guidance. Learn to relax more and let that divine rule and divine guidance become operative in your experience. You will never be transformed into some other man, but through study, through teaching, through prayer and meditation, you will evolve into a higher consciousness of truth. You will still be the same man, but without your old human weaknesses. I have gone into all of this to bring out more clearly the answer to the question of the difference between seeing physically and seeing spiritually. Because when you arrive at the point of realizing that, right here and now, you are spiritual being, the manifestation of all that God is, then you will have left behind the psychic world of seeing visions, seeing colors, or seeing anything of that nature. Spiritual vision. True, you have always been that real man, but you are not always aware of it. When that moment of awareness comes, however, you will look out on this world and realize this is the world that God created. This is it. The human mind is not seeing it as it is, but nevertheless, this is it. The human mind does not see me as I am, but I am He. If I look in the mirror and try to find Him, I shall not be able to see Him, because again, I shall be trying to localize Him. I shall again be looking at a concept and trying to find Him, who is right here as the presence of my own being. How could I be any other than I am? and that I is the manifestation of all that God is. That I is God. That I is Christ, and I am He. In that moment of realization, I am relaxed, and I am He. That is why, in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, He spake only of the Father within and denied His humanhood. I can of mine own self do nothing. My doctrine is not mine, but His that sent me. He was proclaiming that which the world saw as a human being was not, in and of itself, the reality of being, but was the vehicle, or transparency, through which the real was shown forth. But how did He end His ministry? Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. I and my Father are one. In that last vision He told them the whole truth. Divested of human fears, of human anxiety, of human plots and human plans, the I that I am is that spiritual being. It has been said that the highest sense is to be able to look the devil in the face and see only the face of God. That is the spiritual state which is above the mental or psychic. The state of being able to look at every man and woman in the world and say, I am looking into the face of God. That you can do only when your own consciousness has been divested of desire, when you no longer desire anything of another, when you can look out at the world without longing, without lust, animality, hate, or fear. You will be the very same person who 25 years ago might have looked out upon the world and been afraid of this person or lustful of that person. But now you look out and say, why, I see the face of God. Do you see what I mean? There are not two of you. There is only one. And I am that one. But you are that one only in proportion as you have grown through all of these spiritual teachings to that place where you can look out on the world and not desire anything or lust after the things of the flesh, knowing that in the reality of your own being, the fulfillment of God is made manifest. And all that you will ever need will become manifest each moment as the need appears. If it is for money or companionship, or if it is for transportation, whatever the need may be, God fulfills Himself as individual being, as my individual being, and as your individual being. The minute we grasp this, we grasp the highest revelation of spiritual truth. There is not heaven and earth. There is not God and man. There is not spiritual being and human being. There is only one, and I am He. The Master Christian gave us two great commandments. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. Luke 10:27. If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother whom he hath seen, how can he love God whom he hath not seen? 1 John 4:20. If we do not love man whom we have seen, how can we love God whom we have not seen, since God and man are one? To the finite sense which sees out through limited vision, it is true that God is invisible. But once we reach this high estate, this high realization of spiritual being, and can look out on the world and see every person, every circumstance, and every condition as God appearing, then God is becoming visible to us. Until we reach that state, however, God is invisible to us, because in order to honor God, the infinite invisible, we must honor man as God made visible. Gratitude. How do we love an individual? We must understand individuality as God. Understand that God is individual being, the only individuality there is. The only individuality there is. But that individuality appears infinitely, and it appears as individual you and individual me. Therefore, in honoring or respecting the individual, we are worshiping God. I think to pause on that a moment, just like Herb has taught us, the word individual, if you break it down into its original etymology, in meant not in that time. Dividual means divided. So it means not divided from Christ. That's an individual. And also I've learned that it also had a root meaning is indivisible, which is pretty much the same thing. We're indivisible from our Creator. It's impossible to be divided or separated. And we must walk in that truth as we look upon our fellow beings here in the world. That we're always seeing God right where they stand. That's why loving them is so important in that way, not as human love, but in a spiritual manner, in a higher consciousness. So Joel continues here. That is why I said that the first duty of the disciple or student is that of gratitude. Gratitude must be expressed tangibly, and it cannot be expressed tangibly in the abstract. Therefore, it must be expressed to an individual. Only in expressing gratitude to an individual are you expressing gratitude to the individuality of God in one of its forms. You are recognizing God as the source of that for which you are grateful. Never should we receive money or give out money. Never should we take food or drink without the moment's recognition of gratitude to the infinite source, which is also the infinite source of our own being. To do that, but to fail to be equally grateful to the individual through whom the good comes, would be an attempt to be grateful in the abstract. It would be holding our head in the clouds without keeping our feet on the ground. There are many ways or forms of expressing gratitude to an individual. One form, of course, is with money. Another is through recognition. Let us recognize the part that each of us plays in the other person's life and be willing to let our gratitude flow out to that individual in some tangible form. It may be in the form of service. It may be in the form of the spoken word, or it may be in the form of money. Whatever form it takes, it must come out. It must be expressed, and it must be expressed to the individual in order for it to be expressed to God, since God is appearing to us as the individual. Omar Khayyam saw rightly when he said, "Heaven is a vision of fulfilled desire." And you and I are in heaven the very moment we begin to feel that we are living the life that we were meant to live. And we know when that is by the feeling of rightness that is in our lives. There is no real joy in doing work that we do not like. But when we love our work, we cannot wait to get at it. In that sense of rightness, we find our heaven, our harmony. Omar Khayyam had this same vision when he wrote, "A loaf of bread, a jug of wine, and thou." In that simple experience of human companionship, in that fulfillment of the physical need of food and drink, he saw a sense of happiness, a sense of peace and contentment. This vision was mystical, not sensual any more than the Song of Solomon is sensual. It is a spiritual thing, translated into the everyday language of human experience. Take away that everyday human experience, and how would you experience that transcendental thing called happiness or peace of mind? No, it is in this everyday life of ours, in just the simple little things of courtesy, kindness, appreciation, gratitude, helpfulness, cooperativeness, that we ultimately find our spiritual peace and our spiritual contentment, our spiritual harmony. Only in those little commonplace human things, in these human relationships, will we ultimately find our spiritual peace and the divinity of our being. And to pause on that, I was talking recently with a member, and we were discussing the idea of work, our workplace, and how we can harmonize that in regard to productivity and everything, our love for our fellow workers. But I was showing that I know in my own experience that has helped so much in going to give, and just what he's speaking of here, as we go to our workplace with a sense of gratitude and really appreciate all those around us, instead of there being any competition, any conflictive nature in any form, any way, we let it go, and we have that sense of true gratitude for God's love, that what can we give there? And that is to everyone in the company, not just the ones we're associated with. And I found so much pleasure in that, and giving to people in the administration office, people in the reception office, people in all capacities. And the owner often would come to me and thank me so much. And of course, I was rewarded greatly for it through God. But having that appreciation was very, very insightful to allow for more to be given, not worrying about what we get. So that's, again, ultimately we find our spiritual peace and the divinity of our being by that gratitude and appreciation everywhere we are. Attaining spiritual consciousness. We must take the mystery out of the real man and the real universe and come to the realization that this is heaven right here and now. If we are not finding heaven here, it is not because there is some other world we must find, or that there is some other man that we must become. It is only that we must relax our humanhood, divest ourselves of human fears, worries, and doubts. But that cannot be done through willpower. There is only one way in which we can lose our human or mortal sense of existence, and that is by becoming consciously aware of a presence that we know and understand to be God. We come into that consciousness through our receptivity, through our meditation, and through pondering the truths of Scripture or spiritual literature. It is not done merely by affirming and denying until some truth has been memorized and rooted in the human mind. It is done by pondering softly and gently and peacefully these spiritual truths until they really are absorbed so that they actually become a part of our consciousness. In this way, we gain the conviction of the presence of God. We actually experience and feel that presence. And with that, we lose all false human sense, all negative human sense. And we find ourselves in what the world may look upon as a good state of humanhood, but which really is not that at all. It is the divinity of our own being made manifest. That divinity of our being still shows forth as individual you and individual me. The Word becomes flesh and dwells among us. And that Word is made flesh as you and as me. You can see why we do not try to destroy or even to still the human mind. Our effort is in the direction of becoming aware of spiritual truth. We try to gain the consciousness of peace, and then the human mind becomes that which it was originally intended to be, a vehicle for our wisdom and knowledge. In the same way, our bodies do not disappear through attainment of spiritual consciousness, but they become that which they also were intended to be, the vehicle of our individual expression. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. Now try to realize this, that before conception there must have been a consciousness to do the conceiving. There must have been a consciousness to form your very body. As parents, you know you could not do this for your children, even though you were the vehicle through which it was done. A consciousness formed that which you are. It could have been only God consciousness, and it formed you in its mold, maintained you and sustained you in its care. The only thing that has happened throughout the years that have elapsed is that you have taken over the job yourself and have forgotten that that which formed you as an individual being, that which gave you form and body, or that which appears to the world as creation, was a state of consciousness performing the function of an eternal plan. Therefore, that which is formed is spiritual man. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. This consciousness which formed you as a spiritual entity, as a prophet or perfect state of consciousness. Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak. Jeremiah 1:7. In other words, there is always this infinite, eternal, immortal, spiritual consciousness to speak as you, to act as you, to perform as you. The only thing that has happened is that we have separated ourselves from it and have taken over the job just as the prodigal son attempted to do. But through this teaching, we are returning to the Father consciousness and are beginning to realize why I am that prophet. I am that perfect spiritual seer. That's the end of chapter 11. Again, just to learn to live and walk in this truth. Because again, I was very fortunate to have mentors that teach me not to try and outline things, but to trust in this wholly. That even as soon as in the next couple hours of what is to be done, or tomorrow, to get away from planning and scheming and plotting and learn to trust in that infinite, invisible. I've been fortunate to travel to many countries, and my mentors always taught me that those places were never outside of me, that I would find myself there when I knew that they were within me. They were not outside. And that's such a blessing as to the people that you meet all over the world when you see this principle and live it operating in everyone's life, whether they're total strangers or close friends. Often total strangers become close friends in that principle. It has been so proven to me in my life, as I did that even years ago with my young children, living outside the U.S. with them, and the great blessings that came out of that. The many others that have been followed. So Live in that principle. Let it be your life. As we hold that consciousness together, we start seeing the real universe, as Joel talks about here. But it's right there where you stand. It's not some distant future place. It's in the now of your being. Now in your consciousness. So look forward to talking. Leave me a message in WhatsApp if we can talk. So many blessings. Wishing and knowing for you all. Talk soon.